We're right on it, sir.
See, I go down.
I got
South side of 30. I go south.
Quick suggestion, may I make a suggestion? And I keep forgetting this, but at speakers, what I've seen at other meetings is a guy would say, you have 30 seconds left, so they know to wrap it up, instead of doing, phone, people don't, sometimes they don't know.
They pretend not to know.
Well, but if you just say you got 30 seconds or something, and then it gives them time to wind it down.
Thank you.
Then when you hit them the next time, anyway.
I appreciate that. I will start doing that.
Thank you.
And that way they don't even have to look at you.
Right.
Because I don't like to interrupt, but I think it probably makes sense because I get 30 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, you have 30
And they hear me
seconds.
without looking up.
Right.
Thank you for that.
You all ready?
I think we're ready.
You ready at the other end down there? Kathy?
Sorry, very busy. It's your fault.
Sit down.
I want to call the November 1st Executive Committee meeting hearing, meeting to order. Call the roll, please, Mr. Burns.
Larry Leverins.
Here.
Jackson Bogan. Jerry Reynolds.
President.
Gary Schroeder.
Present.
Tom Murtaugh.
Present.
Greg Jones. Kathy Parker.
Present.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the October 4th, 2023 public hearing as submitted.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. No new business that I know of. No public hearing today, no subdivisions. Approval of the November APC public hearing agenda.
I move the following subdivision petitions be placed on the November 15th, 2023 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda at petitioner's request. Placement thereon being without reference to compliance or noncompliance with the subdivision ordinance. S 5160, Three Meadows Subdivision Revised Section 2, Major Preliminary, and S 5161, Odyssey Apartments, a.k.a. 2541 Neil Armstrong Drive, Major Preliminary.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move the following rezone petitions be placed on the November 15th, 2023 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda. Z 2909 Skinnell Properties LLC, GB to I3. Z 2910 HMS Rentals, R2U to R3U. Z 2911 Edward and Lori Opperman, R2 and NB to R2U. Z 2912 DA Mann LLC, R1B to R4W. Z 2913 Meta Group 2 LLC, GB to I3, and Z 2914 Gene Gosenwire, AW to RE.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Variances.
I move the following requests for variance from Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. Case 2319, 7 Brew, care of Whitehead Signs. Case 2023-20, Dollar Tree by attorney Andrew David. Case 2023-21, Triple R LLC. Case 2023-22, DJS Leasing LLC. And case 2023-23, Hitchinson Sign Company.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I move we approve the October 2023 budget report as submitted.
I second.
Mr. Hiddle.
Thank you. I'll just call out one thing. You'll notice a spike in the travel costs and mileage line item. This October is our busy month for conferences. We had 5 staff go to Bloomington for 4 days for the MPO conference, Indiana's annual MPO conference, and another staff go to South Bend for the INAFSM floodplain management. I'm not going to try to come up with the acronym exactly, but it's a floodplain management conference. So hence the extra expense.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Other business, note that the December 6th Executive Committee meeting, as well as the Ordinance and Bylaws Committee, and the December ABZA meeting will be held at the council chambers at Lafayette City Hall, pending some remodeling here, right? Okay. Any other comments? If hearing none,
I move we adjourn.
we are adjourned.
Thank you. 4:35, I think we're ready to go.
Yep.
I will call to order the Area Plan Commission of Tippecanoe County Ordinance and Bylaw Committee for November 1st, 2023. First on the agenda is approval of minutes.
I move we approve the minutes from the October 4th meeting.
A second.
Any questions or comments, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Do we call a roll at this?
We generally do not.
Okay,
We could actually make sure that
we have a
minutes reflect that membership, okay?
We have a quorum present. Okay. Next, Stockwell Form-Based Overlay District.
Thank you. David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. Tonight, I'm going to flesh this out a little bit more, talk about some of the things we've done since the last meeting and some of the changes we've made, and hopefully provide a little extra context. So you have in front of you proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance in the form of a Stockwell Form-Based Overlay District. This arose after or during the approval of the Stockwell Land Use Plan, which was approved just a little over a year ago. It was done in the town of Stockwell and contained all of the typical trappings of a land use plan. One of those items being a future land use map, which is what you see here. The different shades of green are agricultural recommendations, and then the different shades of yellow, from yellow to orange, are different densities of residential development. You can see it's a pretty large study area, and that was because there is pretty strong desire to keep Stockwell relatively rural in its environments and to discourage masses of residential expansion around it. So hence the study area that was quite a bit larger than the actual town itself. If we look a little bit closer at the town, the area that's recommended for yellow, which means recommended for low density or single family dwelling use, is essentially the area that is currently already zoned R1 and or certain portions up here in the north, not zoned R1 yet, but most likely to be ripe, you might say, for eventual residential development. One of the things we learned during this process from the surveyor is that hydrology is more suitable for development north of 900 than south of 900. So this area here, being close to the center of town, might be more apt to be turned into residential use. The rest of it is already platted and or zoned for residential use. So we kind of kept a pretty tight residential footprint on the future land use map there, and is a little bit in service of the fact that there are really two factions that developed during the course of this process. One group that wanted no development anywhere at any time in any way, shape, or form around Stockwell. They wanted it to be frozen in amber and never change at all. And then another group that acknowledged that there may be development and that in fact development may be a good thing, but asserted that that development should be compatible with the nature, the characteristics of Stockwell and its uniqueness, and not just be sort of an imported, homogeneous residential development that you might see anywhere. Another part of that comprehensive plan that was adopted were recommended architectural guidelines. When we talked a lot about the fact that people wanted Stockwell to stay Stockwell, people wanted Stockwell to maintain its small town characteristics, its charm, the word came up quite a bit. So we talked about, well, what does that mean in terms of the built form? And among those things, we kind of distilled it down to 3 different elements. You'll find a lot of places that have architectural guidelines or regulations are voluminous, and they'll go into exterior materials and roof pitch and fenestration, landscaping, even fence design, all of these things. We kind of kept it to the bare minimum and looked at the garage, the porch, and architectural monotony. I'll get to those in just a second, but I think it's worthwhile to back up first here and look at a big picture. This is literally a high-level view of this portion of the county. Stockwell is circled in the lower right. And then you see kind of the existing southeasternmost suburban fringe as it's encroaching south and east. That's where it currently stands. And there's about 5 miles, about 4.8 miles between the two at the moment. And so if you're building up here, you're literally building on virgin territory. You're building in a cornfield, and you have no base of reference architecturally. You're hearkening to nothing except maybe the odd farmhouse that's still there, other than other suburban homes that are already developed. So you kind of have a blank slate, and there's no call or need to try to be compatible or match with anything. And what's there is likely very much similar to what you're building, which would be a conventional suburban house. If you go 5 miles down here, there's never been a post-World War II building boom in Stockwell. There's never been the curvilinear set of cul-de-sacs surrounded by houses. And so it has a much more unique character, and I think that's what gives Stockwell the right to ask for architectural regulations and to say this is what we want our town to look like if it's going to get bigger. The stock is what you might suspect. Relatively modest, different kinds of vernacular from the last 80 to 130 years in Stockwell. It varies from large to small, from grand to very, very modest. This is actually a newer home, as is this one. And this brings us back to the architectural guidelines that were adopted as part of the plan, and specifically this sentence: new development, whether residential or commercial, infill or expansion, should honor the historic built form in its construction and disposition. So to overlay a typology that's completely foreign to this town, in our opinion, is not the proper thing to do, and it's worthwhile to impose, again, 3 very limited architectural requirements that would, to some degree, ensure a type of development that's compatible with what's there. So again, we're looking at garages, front porches, and overall architectural diversity. This is the overlay area that we're using, which pretty much exactly mirrors the existing R1 zoning and the existing platted area and the area that is currently recommended for eventual or potential future residential development. With regard to garages, the idea is that the garage is not dominant. It should be offset from the front facade, a little bit of architectural articulation. It should have a limited width so that it doesn't take up more than 40% of the front facade. And if it's detached, it should be located behind the house. And this is all pretty much traditional development 101. This is all, part and parcel of the experience of town architecture. This is what they don't want. These are the kind of pictures that received resounding negative responses as we went through this plan. With regards to porches, we've changed our course on this after meeting with H&K Builders, which is the development group that is active in Stockwell and it is today and has been for the last few years. We previously were suggesting that there must be a porch and it must be extended from the front facade. They suggested, well, what about a recessed front porch? And we hadn't even thought about that, but that makes sense. A front porch is a front porch, whether it's protruding or it's recessed into the front facade. So we changed the recommended language to include a recessed front porch. But among the stock housing in Stockwell, I think this is again part of a common feature that we would want to see preserved with new construction. This is a new house that meets both of those requirements with regards to the garage and the front porch. This is another one. This is actually a Habitat for Humanity house, which by definition is built for affordability. The third and last item has to do with architectural monotony. The word cookie cutter came up a lot, and it's something that the folks in town who were involved in the plan didn't want. So this is what they don't want. There's a lot of anti-monotony regulations out there. They're pretty voluminous. We tried to pare it down so that it's relatively simple for all interested parties. And one of the main points is that if you have a house built on Lot A, the house built on Lot B right next to it shouldn't be exactly the same. You have a block of houses, no more than 30% of the lots in that house should be developed with any one building model. And then we're defining building model by these items here: massing and silhouette, architectural articulation, footprint, fenestration, exterior materials and colors, and saying to be considered a different model, one from another, you have to have two of those things substantially different, which is a qualitative judgment, grant you. But I think that's a relatively easy thing to get right. The idea is don't make this house and this house and this house look the same. Provide for a little bit of articulation. I don't think anybody's trying to play gotcha with people who are submitting plans. We just want to ensure that there's a little bit of architectural diversity as you go down a new development. We also looked at commercial architecture. There are 4 buildings basically that comprise downtown Stockwell. This is the Stockwell Market building. They're all very similar in that they are brick, they're old, they are built to the street, and they have front doors that function. And those are essentially, again, traditional development 101. Those are the bare minimum requirements that we're recommending as part of these architectural regulations. Those are the 2 other buildings. The trustee's office is in the foreground, and then the cafe that's on the corner in Stockwell. What we don't want is this. This was, again, received with resounding dissatisfaction, this type of development. As we talked about what could happen in downtown Stockwell, perhaps if one or more of the buildings that exist were to go away, the ordinance would just naturally crank out something like this, but this is anathema to small town downtown development, and so the architectural regulations would not allow that. Specifically, they would require that a commercial building in the NBU zone be brick or stone, have a maximum 5-foot front setback, have a front door, have parking areas located behind the front building line, and have no drive-throughs, which is what all of the existing buildings in downtown Stockwell do. With that, be glad to answer any questions you might have.
David, yeah, that particular house, the previous one, if you can go back 2 slides. That one. So
Yeah.
you're saying that, no, I'm sorry, that one, yeah. That does meet the proposed guidelines?
Yeah. The garage is staggered. It's less than 40% the width of the house, and it has a porch.
I thought the garage had to be recessed.
Well, we changed that too. We're allowing for it to be staggered in either direction.
I see.
And then that was a recommendation from H&K as well.
Okay. And so can you go back to the drawing that you had on the garage? Okay. So on that top one,
Yeah, it doesn't tell the whole story.
and so what, is that recessed by 5 feet? What, did you say that there was in that drawing, was there an amount that had to be recessed?
Is it 5 feet and 8 feet?
Okay. Okay.
There just needs to be an offset.
Any questions?
Any other questions for David at this time? Any other questions in general? Otherwise, we'll take some public comment. Thank you. We may have some more. Anybody wishing to speak to this issue?
Hello, my name's Ryan Kennedy. I live at 612 North Ridge in West Lafayette. I guess I'm just going to be really frank here. Like, I don't understand with those two pictures of those houses, the newer ones that have been built, there's nothing architecturally significant about them. They are, affordable housing. That is what, is currently out there. So I'm just curious as to, like, what are we doing here and why are we going through all of this for, a place that has houses that were built in the 1850s, or not 1850s, but, late 1800s, early 1900s. There's been, some not too aesthetically pleasing houses built out there since then. I just don't understand, like, why we are trying to do an overlay district in a town that really doesn't have, to me, and I've been there, I grew up there, doesn't have a lot of architectural charm. The next question that I would have is, who all was in these groups? Like, I just asked my aunt the other day, we have ground that's in the low density, in the yellow, and in the medium density. I asked her, I was like, did you guys get anything, from the meeting after this last ordinance committee meeting? And the answer was no. So when it's presented like, well, this is what the people in Stockwell want, well, like, who are these people and how many of them showed up? Is this really what everybody in the town wants, or is it just a select vocal few? So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ryan. Anyone else wishing to speak to this?
Richard Laughlin, 9311 Yorktown Street in Stockwell. I've lived there all my life. I'm not sure what architectural he does not see in Stockwell, but I see it, and I love it. Stockwell is a unique town. There's all types of different houses, different architects. And again, thank you for Dave for his input on here, because as residents of Stockwell, that's what we're looking for. We don't want the cookie cutter houses. We're not asking for much. Keep the houses a little different. One of the houses he showed was the Habitat for Humanity houses. There's 6 houses that they built in Stockwell, and most of them meet what we're asking for. Again, I live in Stockwell, and I care about what's going on in Stockwell. In the original, our first meeting, we had 300 people there at the church. 100. We had a lot of people had input, so, and that's why this got started. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Darren Sorensen, and I live in West Lafayette. Shrewsbury Drive. And I guess I can concur with some of the things they're asking for. I don't think that some of that's too bad. I just don't like any of the subjective part. When you're the builder and you have to go get a building permit, but you have to have somebody else tell you whether or not what you've done is exactly what they want. I mean, it's the subjective parts of this that I don't like. And that's why I think when we get this slippery slope of architectural controls, that just continually expands and goes forward and then we change it a little bit for the next one. And then we've got stock with her today, but we may have, Brookston come in, or Battleground coming in, pretty soon. And we have other burgs that are going to be coming in asking for the same thing. And as a developer here locally for a long time, I would like to see it. There should have been some kind of a study group that we could have went to and all talked about this instead of just getting it thrown into a few people that voice their concerns. I think that, as the builders will tell you, we just don't like it when it's subjective to just a few people, and different people have different subjective opinions. Thank you.
Thank you.
No one else stood up quickly.
Okay, no, great, thank you. Please come forward.
Good evening, I guess. I'm Patrick Richards, 6990 Navigator Drive, Lafayette, Indiana. Also a residential home builder and commercial general contractor. First question I have is, I was thinking the last meeting we had, we talked about there was going to be conversations about a study group being set up the last time I was here. I don't know if that's the case. Why does, and this is a legal question, I'm asking it, could be a dumb question, why does it have to be an ordinance? I mean, I've developed a few small pieces of property that I've done 4 and 6 lot developments on. I just write restrictive covenants that make it the way I want it to be. Now, I understand that given lots in Stockwell that don't exist yet, why can't the development just have a conversation about how they want it to look to blend with the community that's there currently? That's what we do in subdivisions. The real struggle I have with a lot of things that come through, I'm going to use the word legislative processes, the definitions can be pretty broad. So the first thing I would ask is, what is the definition? I understand what the definition is of massing and silhouetting on commercial projects that I built, because I built some unique ones. So I understand massing very well. However, you're talking about massing on a house, I would say one of those pictures you showed of the gray house that was built that was in Stockwell, the last picture, if you can go to it. Please, thank you. Yeah, so who's going to define massing for that? I mean, that's a very loose word to use, as well as silhouette. I don't even know what that, I mean, I know what it means. I can stand here, they can see my silhouette, but I don't know what that means when it comes to building a home. And the other ones on there too, the fenestration, the footprint, exterior materials and colors. I think you would have to get this so well defined to make sure, as Darren suggested, it's not subjective to someone's idea of what the materials are, that then you're almost saying that the community and a citizen doesn't get to decide what they want on their own home, which I like the government and when they get involved with keeping our streets safe, our cities safe and other things, but it's my house. If I want it to look a certain way, I'm going to go move where I can build a house that looks the way I want it to look, not the way that someone else might tell me it has to be. And what Darren said, it would scare me too. The subjective part is, are you adding one more layer of review again to already a process that's actually working pretty well now, I think. So it adds one more layer of something that we have to come back in and talk about a few more things. And then the houses I build, quite frankly, would never be touched by any ordinance you're going to build, because all of mine are over 1.5 million. So we're building in places anyway that the client knows that's what they want and that's where they want to put it. But on the other hand, I'm only going to relate this to the homes I build. So when a client comes to me and they say, hey, I think I want to change the exterior cladding to this, Okay, then I got to wait 2 or 3 more weeks to go through another review process because my client says they want to change their mind on exterior cladding. I mean, there's already enough involved with pricing stuff in a $1.5 million home and higher. There's a lot involved in that. And my concern is, I know at the last meeting, Mr. Hiddle said this would not extend anywhere beyond Stockwell. And again, I love my community and I love everything y'all do, and I know most all of you personally, and I love you all. But government doesn't stop. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Anyone else, please come forward.
Barney Schuman, 653 Appaloosa Trail, West Lafayette, President of the Builders Association. The only thing that we, struggle with constantly in the past 4 years is affordability. Certain layouts and parameters, take you into certain zones only. So now you're in an R1A. Certain parameters don't allow R1B to work with some of these items as well. So, affordability for entry-level folks and access with fenestrations and et cetera, with front-loaded, garages, rear-loaded garages, there's, added expense for architectural standards. The only thing certain areas have not had any architectural standards in any of the zones. Adding architectural standard layers or review for 30% of this, is allowed in a certain area, or it's not allowed as another review, on a level which delays the process of, there's several models of every builder has, and they have, 5 or 6 different elevations of certain items. It's all over Indianapolis. It's not anything different with the models that are popular and affordable. They do change, fenestration and garage fronts and porches to change those. Just want to, push on, on the fact the affordability, that architectural standards and the constant reviews or excess approvals just adds to, even more costs that are not coming down. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I just wondered, staff, do you have any comments on what you heard? I don't want to call it a rebuttal, but I mean, you don't have to, but I just wondered, giving you an opportunity before we start discussing.
Thanks. Just a couple, as Mr. Laughlin noted, we had public meetings, and they were very, very well attended. I mean, unusually well attended for a planning session. I think between the 2 major public meetings, we had over 150 people. Yeah, for a town of a little over 200 maybe. So that was a plus as far as we're concerned. And then I do understand what Mr. Sorensen noted about the fact that there is some subjectivity to some of the regulations we're showing up there. It's kind of a give and take. We wanted to keep them as simple as possible, but I think to flesh that out, and to quantify things like color and exterior materials and massing to actually make that not subjective anymore would be voluminous, would just multiply, just make it a huge ordinance. But that said, I do understand their concern with the subjectivity. I'm not sure what the answer is, other than just to note that the purpose is just to prevent true monotony from happening. So we're not trying to dictate the form of a building, just saying make your form different than the one that's right next to it. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the board?
I have a question, I guess, because I'm not sure how this process works. If I'm a builder and I come in and let's say this home's already built and it's a year or 2 down the road, who's monitoring the house I'm now going to build on the next 2 lots and my customer wants this, is it got to go 2 lots over? Or, I mean, where does all the monitoring of this, first of all, I'm not for it, but how does that all get monitored is my first question. It's different if, like Pat said, if you're doing a subdivision and you're going in up front and you know. But in a town like this, where it's a lot here, a lot there, there's, you know, how's that oversight going to work? And I'm not a believer in, if I want to buy the lot next door and I want a house, I love the house next to me, I should be able to build that same house.
Okay, thank you.
Are any of the homes that have been built on, I think that's Academy, is that right? Would any of them comply with these restrictions?
Yeah, with the changes, they both would. And the same builder had built some houses on Mill Street, and I think that those would comply as well. Maybe one of them didn't have a porch.
So then why is this needed?
Well, because they see what's coming down from the north. That.
Where, what do you mean coming down from the north? Yeah.
Predominantly, where is that being built at? That is not an accurate.
It doesn't matter, without the code, that could be built.
Yeah, that's the point, is that could be
But
built.
it's not being built currently.
It could be. That's what they're guarding against. They're guarding against a hypothetical.
Let's keep the conversation at the podium, and if you got a question, you can come forward and ask it, but, so, yeah, thank you. Tom, continue with your question.
Yeah,
if you
I mean,
have
it
that.
just, I mean, if what's being built there complies with this, I just don't see the need. It just seems like we should continue to let the market dictate what is happening in the area. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I think form-based code overlays are good in, you know, urban historic areas, but, you know, I'm not sure that Stockwell or any of our rural communities meet that.
Well, the development that's happening there is a trickle, given all, you know, the tremendous upside that Stockwell provides, and there's a long list, you know, it could become much more than a trickle, and that's where the concern lies.
Yeah, Jerry.
Are we making it so confusing that we're going to have builders not want to build there because of the restrictions we're putting on them?
As architectural regulations
Yes.
go, these are the least confusing you're going to find
But
anywhere.
I'm talking about, I think somebody brought about the cost factor involved as we start making these changes and it costs more money, and maybe a builder may elect to have a move to another area or outside of this area that doesn't cause, all these restrictions are not in place.
Well, they're not onerous. Habitat for Humanity has built in accordance with them. I don't think that's a determining factor.
I don't know. I think it might be.
Okay, Kathy, you have any comment?
Do I have any comment?
Yeah, you don't have to, but I want to give you a
Well,
chance.
I mean, I think to me, it seems like a fair compromise to have a form-based overlay, and I guess I don't really know, is it every third house that can look like the gray one, for instance, or how does that work?
I think it just said 30% in the block, what I remembered, so I don't know.
Is there
You wanna-
how many would be allowed on a block?
A block could be any number. There's really just two rules for the monotony requirement. You can't build the same exact house next door to each other.
Okay.
And on any given block, 30% of the lots, not more than 30% of the lots can be any one model.
Sometimes they just flip that mirror image. Would that be considered the same model? They look different, but
Yeah.
it's the same house.
If you make two of those factors substantially different. So if you flip it and it's a different color, then you meet the requirement.
Okay, that would kind of solve that.
But isn't that being done by the market already? I mean, isn't the customer saying, I don't want my house to look exactly like my next door neighbor, so what kind of alterations can we make to, I think the market takes care of this issue.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Tom. I think you're right.
Then it'll be easy to meet.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Greg, you have anything?
Well, Battleground is...
Microphone there.
Battleground, we've had conversations, we're in the middle of our land use plan, and our conversation, the concern has been more in the older down, the original historic part of town, trying to not see, we have one rental owner that is building on lots, and they're as basic a ranch-style house as you could possibly build. And we would like to see something with a little more in-tune character with the rest of the housing in the area. We're not discussing the wider development around the perimeter of town, but we are concerned that just as cheap a possible house can be built and thrown next to the houses with somewhat more character.
Thank you. Larry, yeah.
Let me play the other side of the card here. I see this, and I know it's not the same, but I see this a little bit like a subdivision would form covenants, would put together covenants. You have a town who I will say has made a statement, has said this is what they would like their town to look like, and none of us live there. I'm really kind of leaning toward accepting what they're saying. I see community. I mean, you look out at Provenance here or in West Lafayette. Those kinds of, I'll call them older looking homes or more traditional looking homes can be built. Cost, I don't know what, cost building a house these days is going to cost you a lot of money to build anyway. So I don't know what added cost that would be. But I really I'm really leaning toward listening to what Stockwell is saying and wanting to keep their community Stockwell.
Okay, thank you. I guess as a final comment, just starting off, I think where the comment started that some people in Stockwell did not want any growth. And we did hear from the sewer district that they really need to have growth to share their cost. I think he said they're only running about a third of capacity. So hopefully they will see some growth, and maybe that growth has not happened out there because there wasn't sewer available. As far as the mass and silhouette, I've been involved in some building, and sometimes when they lay that out, the person doing the subdivision will lay that out and say, if you want to buy these lots, here's your model that you can put on there, and that has worked fairly well. Granted, you've seen subdivisions where they go in and they're all the same, and maybe that's a rental community. So sometimes that just takes care of itself. And I mean, if you have a small lot size, it's sometimes hard to fit houses on. Now, I see these houses up here, and my guess is those are in some pretty narrow lots, and they're more deep than they are wide. So there's a lot of house, and I know some of those get built. There's a lot of house behind that garage. It's just a function of getting that fit on the lot. Is it the most aesthetically pleasing? Probably not, but it's probably a pretty functional property and utilization of the land. I guess those, they talked about a study group, affordable, just keeping houses affordable. And I think the builder said, they'll build whatever the homeowner wants. and architectural design. It's just when you start doing that, it just gets more expensive. Typically, they've created even habitat. They have some models that they find to be very economical to build, and that's what they stick to. So that being said, did you have?
I was just going to state, because I
What?
have commercial property there.
Have to come to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
I'm Scott Cochran, 7827 Cornerstone Lane, Lafayette. I live 3 miles north of Stockwell. I have commercial property in Stockwell, and I have 2 soon-to-be rental houses in Stockwell. This is what I see, my vision. This is only the vision. If, David, can you put the land and the colors of the residential, the commercial, and all that stuff? So as you can see, none of these builders behind us, and you got to remember, I'm part of the bagel. I'm going to throw that one out there. These are all my bagel people that I go to. I'm also on the committee with Stockwell, so it's a double-edged sword here. This is what I want to see. I live 3 miles north. I'm in a very restricted, coveted subdivision with 7 houses. So I really like what I have. None of these builders are going to come into Stockwell downtown and build one home because they're not going to make any money. Okay? What I do know is, and I'm going to call him out, Ryan Kennedy has the Miller Farms there. My vision in life is I hope he builds on that land there, because our septic system is 25% capacity, right? I pay $66 a month per sewer, so I've got a large bill every month. If we could get a builder to build in there and hook up to that system, that's going to help. Cole Elementary is one of the best elementary schools in this town. We are not at full capacity there, so we can handle any new subdivision. The subdivision I'd love to see is a $300,000 to $500,000 house come in there. Okay, I know that that can handle it with everybody able to get on the 52 going down the Lebanon, because everybody knows that new building's happening there. I could see a Rainy Brook, not as big as Rainy Brook, but back in the 70s, Rainy Brook started that way, right? It had nice houses, and then it's just grown up. We have the land available for that, and we're outside of Stockwell. So if we could just keep a little bit of what David's asking, that would be great. But again, if you get my vision of $300,000 to $500,000 houses, it's already going to happen.
Right.
So then it comes to what, like Tom says, isn't the market already? So that's just where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. What does the board want to do?
Is there any way I can say one more thing?
Pardon me? Okay, Ryan.
Really quickly.
Sure.
Thank you. I mean, what about just making like the downtown area, like the darker yellow or orange, whatever it is? Why can't that just be like designated as a historic district? And then you would protect, you know, everything in there. But all of the stuff along the outskirts of town, the further away that you go out, you know, it would really help like absorption and just development in general. You will get more by not doing the architectural restrictions than you would doing them just like a blanket overlay. So.
Okay, thank you. Good point.
And that's actually not a bad idea, meaning that it would apply to any infill and not to any
Newer.
Yeah, I like that.
So where do we want to go with this? We can either vote on this, there's talk about a study group. I think they have some ideas, and it seems like the more we talk about it, the more ideas we get. We've already made a couple changes to this that make it work a little better, and I'm not sure we're in a hurry that we have to get this passed.
So can we talk a little bit about what the study group might look like? And and who all should be invited to attend? So,
Well, why don't you make a motion that the ordinance committee send this to a study group, and then we'll talk about that.
okay. All right. I will make that motion.
So I have a motion to send this to a study group, and do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, well, motion is second. Discussion on that, and maybe that's where you could talk about who seems like the obvious Why don't you make a suggestion?
Well, I mean, I would say we'd want to have our smaller communities represented, obviously on this committee. And, obviously we need folks from Bagel represented, we need staff represented. But obviously we don't want to get it too big. Am I missing any?
Just people
Folks.
from Stockwell. I mean, you might have a representative from, so you get all points of views. But, I mean, there's just, the more we talk about it, it seems like the more ideas we come up with that
Yeah, but
that
I
make
mean,
sense.
I'm hoping that the study group, though, can look at it, across the board and
Gotcha.
not just for
Independent.
one community, but,
Gotcha. Well, that's
talk
a good
about,
point. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, and talk about exactly where these overlays should be, and
Okay. Any other comments?
How many people would you want in the study group?
Well,
less than 10?
who should form this study group? Should the staff? Should somebody from here do that? Should,
I would think the president of this committee should do it.
okay, the president of this committee will do this.
Or commissioner.
Or the president of this, okay. That wasn't a motion, was it? What? Hey, I'll do it if that's what we need. So is your motion that we will form a committee, and we have a second, and kind of some suggestions of who should be, and I will form the commission.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Just it might be helpful if any of the members up here have any names to suggest, to send them to you.
Okay.
That
yeah.
might pop up in the next
They have any?
week or so.
Obviously, we have Bagel, staff.
Okay.
Yeah. Greg, if he's available. Okay, if there's no other comment, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. So we'll get together and figure that out in the next short period of time, and I think it just seems like the more we talk about it, the better we get this, and we'll move forward with it. What else is on our agenda here? Citizens' comments. Hearing none. Oh, one other thing, next month's bylaw, we said that before, next month's ordinance and bylaw committee meeting will be held at the City Council Chambers of Lafayette City Hall, 20 North 6th Street in Lafayette. We've said that a couple times. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll take that final motion.